Hi everyone and welcome to this video. In this video, I am going to take some time and explain to you how to access the statistics project that you're given this semester and also try to give you some helpful hints and guidelines when you start the project. So let's begin. So the first thing you need to do is to find all these project resources in Brightspace. So here you can see I'm logged into Brightspace. So if I come over to the left-hand menu and I scroll down, eventually I get to a thing that says project. Notice it's right under tests and exams. So let me click on project and see what happens. So when I click on this, I see one, two, three things. The first is the StatCrunch NBA dataset. You can't really do any of the work on the project without accessing the dataset. So you can either click on this or you can open it in a new tab. So I don't want to lose this page because I want to come back to it. So I'm going to right click and click on open a new tab. Now, one thing that really is frustrating and annoying to me is that it still opens it in Brightspace. So the first thing I would do is down here it says external resource and it says open a new window. Okay, I don't want it embedded in Brightspace. That's very frustrating and annoying. It makes it hard to work with. So I'm going to click on open a new window and then I'm going to close this guy out. Okay, so this is so much better. Now I have this whole window to work with in StatCrunch. Now notice I'm already logged in, right? If you're not logged in, you can see the data set, but you won't be able to manipulate the data set or do any of the work that you need to do. Okay, so let's take a minute and look at this data set and what it's giving us. So the first column is the player name. Notice if you scroll down, there are, I don't know, 600 and some data entries. So I think it's 606 data points. Okay, so you have the name of the NBA player, okay, the team for which they play. Sorry, you have their jersey number, okay, the position that they play, their height in inches. So remember, if you want to find their height in feet, you can just divide the inches, this number by 12. Okay. Then they have their weight, the institution that they last attended, and then their country of origin. Okay, so this is the data set that we're looking at. I just want to remind you, if you don't already know this, you can sort by any of these things if you wanted to sort low to high. So if I click on this, for example, I think I have to click on the number, right? So if I click on sort table ascending, I could sort them by their jersey number. So a lot of them have 0. I don't know if that means they really have 0 on their jersey or if that means that there's no data there. Let's sort them by their height. So we could do sort table ascending, right? So that's kind of fun because then you can see the shortest player all the way up to the tallest player. Okay. So very interesting. You can also see their weight. Again, we can sort this, sort ascending, descending. You could do it from smallest to largest, or you could sort it from largest to smallest. Okay. Also, if you wanted to group them by teams, you could do that. It won't give me back. There we go. Let's see. Yeah. So let's sort ascending, right? So all these people play in Atlanta, right? Boston, Chicago, Dallas, so on and so forth. Okay. So again, that's just to get you familiar with the data set. That's what you need to do. So let's say I've already opened the data set and then obviously I need to actually read, well, what am I supposed to do with this data set? So that's why I didn't want to get rid of this thing. So if I open this project in a new tab, okay, so this is the actual assignment and this is where you're going to be submitting your final project as a PDF. So notice this project has a PDF attached to it and that is where you're going to find the project description. Okay, so let's take some time and read through this project. Okay, so the project directions tell us that we have to submit all of the project as a single PDF in Brightspace. Okay, you are allowed to use the Math Center, just the CCBC Math Center, and you're also allowed to come to me for office hours. Okay, you're not allowed to use any other help. So if you have a family member or friend or something, and you're like, oh, they're really good at statistics, no. Okay, you're not supposed to use those people. You're just supposed to use either me or the Math Center. That's it. Okay. I'm going to create a academic integrity document where you have to sign and say that you didn't use any other human sources of help besides me or the Math Center. I will also be using Urkund. That's the software thing that checks for plagiarism. So if you just steal something off the internet, it's going to be quite obvious. I think that would be kind of hard to do anyway, since you're working with a very unique data set. Okay, let's keep reading. Project formatting. The first thing it says is to do not include any part of the project questions or prompts in your submission. Okay, so I've deliberately created this as a PDF document because I don't want you to open this and edit it. Okay, You can have it open while you're working, okay, but I don't want these prompts that are in the project description. I don't want to see them in your submission. The only thing in your submission is your images and your responses to the question, okay? Your written responses have to be in complete sentences, and they need to make it obvious what the question was asking. So, for example, right, one of the questions asks you, was the box plot skewed left, skewed right, or symmetrical? So let's say you decide, okay, the box plot is skewed left. So you need to say the block spot shows that the data set is skewed left. If you just say skewed left or it is skewed left, okay, that's too vague. Skewed left is not a complete sentence. It is skewed left. Well, what is skewed left, right? Well, it's the data. So you need to be really, complete and thorough in your responses. Okay. You're also asked to have 1-inch margins and use Times New Roman 12-point font. Okay. So the first thing you're going to do is open the data set in StatCrunch. Okay. If you want to, in StatCrunch, you can save the data. So if I just click on data and save, okay, then it will save my own personal copy. Okay, and then see if I click on save results. Do you guys see that? If I click on that, then I don't have to redo my hypothesis test or creating my box plot. It'll save all of those things. Okay, so just know that you can do that when you have access to StatCrunch, when you have your account that you paid for, and that will save you time recreating the wheel if presumably you don't finish this project all in one sitting, because I don't expect you to do that. Okay, so again, click on save and then click on save these results. Okay. Let's go back to the description. Okay. So it's a random sample. I don't know, honestly, if this is all the players in NBA or if it's a sample of them. But again, we looked at what's there. Okay. So make sure you understand what you're looking at in the data set. So let's start with part one. Okay. It asks you to create a horizontal box plot of the player's heights. Okay. You're going to have to click the draw box horizontally box. Okay. You're also going to have to click the mean and median box. Okay, make sure the image is large enough so that everything is easily legible. Now, obviously, I'm not going to demonstrate this with you with the actual data set, so I found a silly data set, which is superheroes, right, like Marvel Comics and stuff like that. Okay, so in your data set, obviously yours is going to be different. You're doing NBA players, which are real people, not silly things, right? So you would go to graph and box plot. Okay, so I just want to do the height, so I have to tell StatCrunch which data set, right, which column I want it to do, or else it's not going to do anything. Okay. I do want to keep this checked because I want outliers. I want to modify box plot. Then I'm going to click on draw boxes horizontally, and I'm going to also click on these other two boxes because I want to see the mean and median. So let's hit compute. Okay. So as you can see here, there's like this huge range of heights, which makes sense, right? Because some superheroes, I guess, are like thousands of feet or hundreds of feet tall, right? But you can still see my mean and median. The mean is green, the median is red. Okay, and then all the dots, of course, represent outliers. Okay, so once you've resized this so that you're happy with it and you can see everything and I can read all these numbers and I can read the text clearly, then you can do this a bunch of ways, but basically you have to capture this image and paste it into a Word document. So let me show you what that looks like. So I like to use this thing called the snipping tool. To get to the snipping tool, I just go down here to Windows, Windows Accessories, and it's down there. Okay. So if I click on New, okay, notice everything kind of goes gray. So what I can do is I can do this cursor. I hold down my mouse button. Okay. And then this is what is on my clipboard. Right. So what I've already done for myself is I've created this Word document. Okay, so I'm going to just paste this image next to number one into my Word document. Okay, and just again, maybe resize it a little bit, make sure that I can see everything. Okay, so number two says based on this box plot, is the data skewed left, skewed right, or approximately symmetrical, right? And we want to use the mean and the median to justify your answer. So you might have to go back into your notes. Okay, so I would write that down in number two. So notice here that I already have these all numbered. Okay, so this is number one, then this would be number two, and so on and so forth. So make sure your responses are numbered. Okay, the next thing it asks me for is a 5-number summary. That's really easy to get to. So if you go back to StatCrunch, okay, we're going to go to Stat, Summary Stats, Columns, and again, click on Height. Okay, If you want, you can leave all of these selected and hit compute. Okay, and then you can see here's Q1 and Q3. You have your min and your max, and then remember your Q2 is your median. Okay, if you don't like having all this other stuff here, you can always go back to this menu, and just select the ones you want. So median, we need median. We need minimum, Q1, median, Q3, and we need maximum. Okay, and since I selected in the correct order, right, it gives me my 5-number summary in order: minimum, Q1, Q2, Q3, max. And if you're wondering how I selected non-adjacent things, I use the control button on my computer. If you have a Mac, it might be different, but on a PC, hit control, and then it allows you to select non-adjacent options. Okay, so this is your 5-number summary. You can recreate it, retype it into Word, or you can be a little bit lazy and just, do a screenshot like this, and then, paste it right into here. It's up to you. I created this. Okay. Number 3 asks you to calculate the lower fence and upper fence. So you need to put in the calculations. You can just type them in regular, formatting or whatever. If you don't want to do that, you can also go to Insert and click on Equation, and then click on your equation tools and do that there. It's up to you. Okay, but I need to see the overall formula, and then I need to see the actual values and then the answer. Okay. So then the question says, based on these calculations, any superhero less than blank, so that would be my lower limit, whatever that is an outlier. Any superhero taller than blank is also an outlier. Of course, yours isn't about superheroes, yours is about NBA players. Okay. Then it asks you how many outliers there are. Now, of course, in my data set, if we come back to our box plot, there are a ridiculous number of outliers, right? Sorry about that. Right, all of those dots are outliers because it's kind of a ridiculous data set because it's about fictional characters that don't exist in real life, right? There's nothing in real life that's like 700 feet tall. That's silly. Okay, you're only going to have a handful. You're going to have fewer than 5 outliers in your data set. I'll just tell you that right now. So you only have a few to list. So let me show you the best way, the easiest way to figure out what those outliers are. So one feature of StatCrunch is once you have your box plot, if you just hover over this outlier, for example, right, it says row 256. So just remember row 256. Okay. So then I come down here, scroll down, 256. Aha. Right. So this is some crazy guy named Fin Fang Foom. I don't even know what kind of superhero that is. Never heard of them. Okay. But right, for your project, you can use this. Okay, and you would just use, you could hover over again in the box plot. Go back to the box plot, hover over each outlier, figure out where it is, right? So this one, let's look at this one. This is row 719. Okay, so come down here, find row 719, just dragging down the guy, dragging down the cursor. Okay, this one is Wolfbane. Okay, so I guess that's some sort of female superhero here. Okay, now the weird thing about this is, the catch with this is that it's only going to give you 1 point, whereas there might be multiple data points represented by this dot. Okay, so the way around that is pretty simple. What I showed you earlier in this video is I just said that you need to be able to sort stuff, right? So let's sort this ascending, okay? And then I'm going to come up here. Okay, so let's make up some numbers. Okay, let's pretend that I found that my lower fence was 100, right? If I know that my lower fence is 100, then anything below 100, right, all of these characters would then be outliers. Okay, so I can use the sorting feature combined with the knowledge of my lower and upper fence to find my outliers. Again, I didn't actually do the math, so I'm just pretending, I'm guessing. Okay, then let's pretend that I found that anything over 200 centimeters was also an outlier, right? So then I would scroll down. Okay, well, this guy is 201 centimeters, right? So here, and all the way down, those would be outliers on the other end of things. And of course, I don't know. I didn't do the math. And just remember, you're only going to have a handful of outliers. You're going to have fewer than 5 outliers with your data set. So it will be very easy and reasonable. Okay. But again, if you just look at that box plot, it's slightly misleading Okay, because if you hover over, like I said, the data points on the box plot, it's only going to give you one row, one data point per dot, whereas there actually might be multiple data points associated with that value. Okay, so you want to look at this, right? Get those few values from there, copy them down, but then also, fact check yourself by doing this sort this by column height. Sort this column, right, low to high by height, and then use the values you found for your lower and upper fences to determine which values are outliers. So you can see what I did is I created a table in Microsoft Word, so you can have the name and then the height. Okay, so maybe do something like that. And then you're asked to explain, what it means that they're outliers and how do you know they're outliers and what does that tell you about them. Okay, so then let's go on to the second part. Okay, so again, I just went over 1A, so that's just the box plot and descriptive statistics. So part 1B, still descriptive statistics. This time we're going to do a linear regression. So the first question says, okay, well, before even looking at the data set, what type of relationship would you expect to see between the heights and the weights of NBA players? So in other words, as the height increases, would you expect the player's weight to increase as well, or would you expect it to decrease? So in other words, is that a positive or negative correlation? Okay, then it asks you, well, do you expect to see a strong correlation, like a high correlation coefficient, somewhere in the middle, or like a very weak relationship? What would you think? Okay, and again, this is just a guess. There's no right or wrong answers. Okay, if you get down here and actually calculate the correlation coefficient and realize you were wrong, please don't change it. Okay, this is just a guess. It doesn't have to be a correct guess. As long as you can justify your reasoning, then it's fine. I don't need you to guess correctly. Again, a guess is a guess. Okay. So number 2, then you have to perform a linear regression. So let's see how to do that in StatCrunch. Again, we're back here. Okay, so we're going to go to stats, regression, and simple linear. Okay, so I have to tell it what I want the x variable to be. So I'm going to say height and weight. Okay, and then I'm going to hit compute. Okay, so I'm going to resize the screen just so we can see it. Okay, so the first part asks you for the graph. So I don't know if you guys know this, down here, if you click on this right arrow, okay, right here, it gives you your scatter plot with a line superimposed over it, okay? This is what I want. This is what I want you to give me for a screen grab. So come back to my snipping tool, okay? I steal this thingy, okay, and I put it right here for number 2. I'm gonna paste it, okay? So there we go. That's my answer to number 2. Again, making sure you resize it just so that the image is, all the text in the image is visible, okay? So number 3, they want us to provide the linear regression equation. They want us to use y and x instead of words, and they want us to round this to 2 decimal places. So go back to page 1 here. Okay, here is my equation. So let me copy this and let me paste it back into here. Okay, so there's a few things I need to change here. Okay, the first thing is I want this value to be y. I don't want it to have a word here. And I want this thing to be x. That's the first thing I want to change. The next thing I have to change is I want to round to 2 decimal places. The number next to 0 is a 3, so it stays as a 0. The number next to 4 is a 2, so it stays as 4. Okay. Notice that since I pasted it the way I did, unfortunately it changed my font, so I'm going to change it back to Times New Roman 12 like I'm asked to. Okay, and then I'm going to move it back up here. Okay, so of course yours is going to be different because you're working with a different data set. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I'm just trying to demonstrate to you how to do this stuff in what am I trying to say, in StatCrunch, right, and how to format it. Okay, I'll play around with formatting later. Okay, so then it asks me for the correlation coefficient. It tells you the correlation coefficient right here is 0.193. Again, we're asked to round to 2 decimal places, so it would be here for this one, it would be 0.019. Okay, so in this case, of course, 0.019 would be a very weak positive relationship. And then I have to say, does that confirm or support my prediction, or does it contradict it? That's all. Okay. Then we get to coefficient of determination. That's your R² value. Okay. And that's, again, right here. So again, we have to round it to 2 decimal places. This is 0.037. So I'd round it to 0.04. Okay. Okay, then remember the template. This means approximately blank percent of the variation in a superhero's weight can be accounted for by a superhero's height. The remaining blank percent of the variation is accounted for by other factors. So you should know how to fill that in, right? So if it's 0.04, that means that only 4% can be predicted by the weight, and 96% is predicted by other values. Okay, so that's it for part B. So again, going back to the actual prompt, keep in mind, of course, I'm using a different data set. So, you guys will be talking about actual real people, and you're talking about NBA players, not superheroes. But again, the prompts are the same. The way to do things in StatCrunch is the same. All right, so then part 2 is the inferential statistics part where you're asked to create or conduct a hypothesis test. Okay, so it says that the average male height across the world is 67 inches. That's only 5'9". It's not very tall at all. So the question is, would you expect the average height of NBA players to be above or below 67 inches? Okay, and you need to explain why would you expect that. Okay, again, you don't have to be right. You just have to justify and reason what your answer is and why is it that way. Okay, so once you make that prediction, again, before you look at any data, just based on what you know about basketball players, right, and the NBA, make that prediction. Okay, then we get into hypothesis testing. Okay, so the question is, should you use a t-test or proportion test? This depends on the data type, right? We use t-tests when we have quantitative data. We use proportion tests when we have qualitative data. So are we working with quantitative or qualitative data? That's what you need to explain there. Okay, then you need to explain your null and alternative hypotheses. State your p-value and your alpha. Your alpha is already given to you right up here. Okay, and then based on your p-value, you're going to either reject or retain a null and write a summary question. Okay, so let's go back over here. Right, so I would expect the average heights of superheroes. I'll just say, I would say maybe that it's greater than the world average, because superheroes are fictional characters, and some of them, or many of them maybe, are unrealistically large, or way larger than human beings, right? However you want to say. Again, you're not talking about superheroes, you're talking about NBA players. Keep spelling this word wrong. Okay, so hypothesis test. What kind of test should you use? And it's because you're working with what kind of data, quantitative or qualitative. You need to talk about that. Okay, then we have null and alternative hypotheses. Okay, you need to state those. Remember, they need to either have one of two things. They either have mu in them, right, because you're dealing with a mean, or they have p. So either if you're using a t-test, then you need to put in mu here. Some people don't know how to do that. There's two ways to do it. You can either do equation, okay? If I click on equation tools here and come over to this menu and scroll down, okay, I can select mu. That is your mean. Okay, so I could do mu equals, 67, or mu is greater than. If you think, okay, I shouldn't use mu, I'm not doing a t-test, I'm doing a proportion test, then you wouldn't use mu, you would use p for proportion. Okay, you decide which one you think is appropriate. Are we working with proportion, or are we working with means? Your choice, right? There's a right or wrong answer, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. Okay, so again, either mu or p needs to be in your statement. Some students do this. That is not right. Okay, the null hypothesis is not 67, right? The mean is 67, or the proportion, right? Whichever one you think it is. Okay, so I would do that, and then have my alternative hypothesis. Of course, your alternative hypothesis would have to have a inequality sign, so you pick the appropriate one. Okay, then I have to find my p-value. So this is where I actually have to use StatCrunch. So go back to StatCrunch here, right? We go to stats, either t-stats or proportion stats, whichever one you think is appropriate, right? Either way, you would go to one sample, and then you're going to click on with data. Okay, so you have to pick, which thing you're doing, right? So let's say I want to do height. Okay, I have to put this in, right, and then program my hypothesis test, put in the right values. Okay, so that's for a p-test. If you're like, oh no, it's not a p-test, it's a t-test, you would still go to one sample with data and click on height. Okay, And then, you typed in here 67 and change your inequality sign. Okay. So let's look at this. Okay. The value you have to pull out of here is your p-value. Okay. In this case, my p-value is teensy tiny. It's less than 0.0001. And that's exactly what I would be typing, in here. The p-value is less than 0.0001. Okay. So does that mean I reject or retain the null hypothesis? You decide. Okay. And of course, the alpha, also restate your alpha. I gave it to you in the problem statement. Okay. And then based on your decision to reject or retain, you need to write your sentence. Remember, your sentence goes, there is either sufficient or insufficient evidence, depending on your decision, at the blank significance level. So put alpha in here as a percent to suggest that the average height of superheroes, of course, you're going to say NBA players, is greater than the world average of male height. So the last resources I want to show you or point out to you are the rubric and the template. So if I click on this rubric, let me open it in a new tab. Okay, this rubric shows you exactly where your points are coming from. So I strongly recommend after you finish your project, just take a minute and play teacher and go through and grade your own project before submitting it. For example, did you use 1-inch margins? Is your font Times New Roman 12 point? Did you remember to not include any of the questions, but only answer them in complete sentences? Did you number your responses? Did you use proper spelling and grammar? Are your discussions coherent? Do they make sense? Then, moving on to part 1A, did you include the box plot? Is it horizontal and not vertical? Did you put the mean and median on the box plot? Stuff like that. Okay, and again, just go through, pretend you're like the teacher grading your own project and check off every single item. And that way, you can ensure that, especially for some of these easier things that are really obvious, that you followed all the directions. Okay, so I always tell my students that go through and grade yourself. Another thing is I always tell my students you can email me or come talk to me in office hours and we can talk about your project together. Okay, so if you want to check and say, I did this hypothesis test and I don't know, maybe you did a proportion test and you're like, was that the right test? Right? Or is my p-value correct? I'm always happy before the deadline, obviously not on or after the deadline. I'm always happy to look over your project with you and help you and answer any questions. Okay, so I don't mind putting a pair of eyes on your project and looking over it with you. The other thing I wanted to point out is that I did create this template. It's only in a Word format, so if you use some sort of editor that's not Microsoft Word, then you might not be able to use this. But if you open it, then I guess you would click on Download. Okay, and then of course I would open it with Microsoft Word. Okay, once you have it open in Microsoft Word, then you can go to File and Save As and save it to your local computer. Okay, so what this is basically just, I already have given you the 1-inch margins. I've given you the Times New Roman 12 point font. Okay, and then you would just, delete the stuff where it says answer number 1 here, right? You would delete that and fill in your answer. Okay, I also gave you some nice little tables so you can just fill in these numbers. Some basic calculations. So you could type in, for example, the IQR here, type in your equation, so on and so forth, and then fill in some blanks. Okay, so just make sure you fill it in if you want to use this. If there are things like this, obviously you'd have to pick: is it a weak, a moderate, or strong relationship, right? So delete everything that you don't want, and so on and so forth. Okay. So again, this is just sort of a matter of convenience to save you a little bit of time with formatting. Because again, like I said, I've already done the margins, the fonts for you, and have some prompts so that you can basically just fill it in.